I'm a project manager and I work for a bank in Canary Wharf. I've been married since 2009 and I have 2 children, a boy and a girl.
Okay, and you're married to?
Eileen.
Eileen, and your children's names?
Ethan James and Elizabella.
Great. And you live locally to St Thomas's?
Yes, very local, in Southgate, just off Chase Way.
Okay, and how long have you been coming to the church here?
About 2.5 years.
Okay. So growing up, did you grow up in a church-going family, a Christian family?
I grew up in a family where my parents predominantly were Buddhists, but they weren't really practicing Buddhists, but at special occasions then they would fulfill certain festivals.
Okay. And so through childhood, teenage years, no real church or Christian
I went to Church of England schools for both primary and secondary.
Okay.
So I did understand the concept of believing in God and Jesus through Christianity.
Okay. So after school, what did you do then?
After college,
Okay.
I started working quite early. So I went to university for about a term. I didn't like it.
Okay.
And then I found a job working for a startup.
Okay. So if I'd met you then and chatted to you, how would you have described your sort of religious views and its significance in your life?
I would have said that there was very little significance, but I did have an interest in Christianity. But even at that time, when I was with my girlfriend, Eileen, who's now my wife, I didn't think she would ever want to become a Christian because her family is also Buddhist, but they are practicing Buddhists.
Oh, okay, okay. So then what sort of happened to start changing that? How did that begin to change for you?
I think as I got older and I wanted to have something that gives me more meaning in life, especially after my father passed away, and for a period of years after that I was a very angry person in general. Mm-hmm. And I found coming to God gave me some comfort.
Okay. And can I ask why? And so you started looking towards Christianity?
Well, I think firstly I wanted to try and delve more into Buddhism, mm-hmm. But that didn't really take me anywhere, and it was very difficult for me to understand the traditions. I was more comfortable with Christianity. Okay. And that's why I wanted to explore more Christianity. And by doing that, we went to a number of churches in the area, actually, okay. Before we settled here. Okay,
so and when you were going to these different churches, at that point, you were looking, you had questions, you sort of...
We both had questions, so we wanted to be able to speak to a minister or a reverend to ask them difficult questions about Christianity, why certain things happen. Okay. And we thought once we've had some of those questions answered, then maybe we could think about becoming a Christian.
Okay. So you mentioned Eileen there. So were you going through this together? Was she also in a similar
were,
position
and I have
you?
to say it was probably more instigated by her at that point.
Okay. Had she had a similar experience again, but she didn't pursue the Buddhist route, but...
She tried to practice Buddhism more than I did, but it didn't really click with her, she found, and due to various events in our lives, she stumbled upon Christianity, and during the course that's when she felt that she really wanted to continue and explore more about Christianity and then finally become a Christian. Okay.
So what brought you to this church in particular?
Went to 5 or 6 churches in the area.
Right.
We found that this one was most suited to us because of the sermons. We were quite taken aback when we went to some other churches. It was very much just reading from the Bible but not explaining what was the meaning mm-hmm. behind them in a level of detail for us to grasp. Yeah. And we found St Thomas's was the best for that. Okay. And it also had the additional worship for children as well, and we wanted to bring up our children as Christians.
Okay. Do you remember when you first started coming to church, or perhaps when you came here for the first time, or when you look at these different churches you went to, do you remember how you were feeling when you first went to church?
It was a bit daunting to begin with, and we sat right at the back of the church mm-hmm. Until I think it was probably St Thomas's where there are a number of people who approached us and tried to ask us to take more part or go and have coffee with them after church in the church hall, which was very welcoming.
Great. So you started to attend, and then what sort of happened next to?
We must have been to church every Sunday for maybe 6 to 8 weeks before they started talking about a course they were doing in a church for people who were new to Christianity or wanted to explore Christianity. And that's when the Reverend approached us and asked us whether we'd be interested, and we said yes.
Okay, and what was that course?
Christianity Explored.
So just tell us a little bit about that and how you got on with it.
So it was one of the students from Oak Hill College who took the course for us. They were very welcoming, and they did everything around our timing. So we've got very young children, so they came to our house quite late in the evening, around 8:30, and I think it lasted about an hour or an hour and a half. And the course would evolve around a DVD which has been written for the course, and there were certain sections that we went through together with a book and a guide, and every week we would go through the booklet and watch a bit of the DVD, and then coaxed to ask as many questions as we wanted about Christianity. James Isaacs would write down the questions together with his wife that we had. Sometimes he would answer them straight away, sometimes he would come back a week later after he'd maybe explored a bit more, and then come back to us with the answers that we were looking for.
Okay. And so were you finding through that some of these big questions that you've been grappling with for a while were starting to be convincingly answered?
Yes, so I can talk about one of them in particular, which is quite personal to me. Because my father was a Buddhist, there are certain traditions you have to perform at certain dates, especially when due to his passing. Part of this tradition would be to burn lots of gold paper and silver paper, signs of respect, and also to give money to my father in the underworld. Yeah. And I said to James that even if I did become a Christian, I want to continue with these traditions, because even in Christianity you're supposed to continue to respect your parents and father. But as we continue through the course and I learnt about Jesus and salvation, the gift of salvation, then to me it actually meant that I didn't actually need to do that anymore, because it finally meant to me that it doesn't actually mean anything. It made you feel better, but it wasn't actually something that is necessary. And that was a big relief for me, because I was very angry with some of my family who were already Christians, who wouldn't burn any of that paper and wouldn't bow down to my father when he passed away.
Okay, that's helpful. And was it during the course? Was it during the course? When would you say you became a Christian? Was it gradual, or can you say when it?
I think it was gradual. So in the first number of courses, I had a lot of questions, and I thought, there's no way this guy's going to be able to answer all these questions. And I kind of know this because I explored this when I was 16 with another minister, and then he would come back and say, well, some of these questions you just can't answer. So you just have to have faith. But it wasn't like that with James or the course. He did try very much to answer all of our questions. And I think the most emotional time was actually when my wife was emotional and started crying when they did the section about sin and also the resurrection of Jesus. And I'd have to say, at that point, I wasn't still 100% convinced, but the next two courses, that's when I said, actually, I want to become a Christian as well and continue to explore.
Okay. And so, how long ago was that?
About 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years. And so, had your wife Eileen become a Christian around the same time, or just before?
No, we were both exploring at the same time, where we both were not Christians. Yep. I have to say that she would have said that she was Christian maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I felt like I wanted to commit and continue going to church and continue exploring the scriptures with the church as a whole.
Okay. And so would you say that it was obviously through that and over the period of those courses on that you became a Christian? Was it something you could sort of time and date, or no, it was over a period of a few weeks?
I don't think I could time and date it, no. It was over a period of time. Even if when I committed to being a Christian, I have to say that I've still got a lot of learning to go to see what actually life as a Christian is. Because my early perception was that I want to be a Christian, but I don't want to change, and I don't want my wife to change.
Right.
But that is not the case. We've both changed immensely.
Okay. And has that been a good change or a bad change?
So originally I would have thought it was a bad change, but now I think it's a very good change for both of us.
Okay. Yeah. Can you give any ways, sort of examples of how you've changed since you've become Christians and how that's been?
I'm far less arrogant. I'm more sympathetic towards people as a whole, and I've got more patience. That's what to me has been fundamental in my change, and I can say for my wife as well that she's a much more kinder person as well and much more sympathetic. Okay. Whereas we're probably both before a bit more challenging people.
Right. Okay. And if anybody was watching this and they were somebody who perhaps like you had lots of questions and so on, what would you say to them about Christianity?
I would say they need to, or they should try to remain open-minded. Before you say that you don't want to explore Christianity or something not for you, why not speak to someone about the faith, and then ask your questions, slowly get them answered, and then try exploring reading the Bible to see why it makes sense, and hopefully they'll become Christians as well.
Great. Okay, thank you, Guy. That's great.